You control 18 companies now, nearly $500 million in assets, and you don't fully own most of it. You never needed to. But one question still won't leave you. Not how did I get here? The other one. Why did the first seller pick me? 15 years ago, you had $88,000 in a checking account and were staring at a business listed for $3.5 million. And you were about to learn that money was never the thing standing between you and that deal. You've had the listing open for 3 days. Not because you're deciding, you already decided. You're just working up the nerve to admit it to yourself. You're 32, an operations manager at a distribution company outside Nashville, making $81,000 a year. You know your checking balance down to the cent, $88,204, because you've checked it every morning this week, the way some people check the weather. 6 years climbing someone else's ladder. An MBA you paid for yourself, finished at night. Weekends running spreadsheets for a boss who still calls you kid. The listing is a laundry and linen service operation outside Knoxville. 5 locations, industrial machines, contracts with 2 hospitals and a hotel chain. The seller is a man named Harold Vance, 67, who built the whole thing from one storefront his father handed him in 1985. His knees can't take the concrete floors anymore. You've talked to Harold twice. Both times, he asked more about how you'd treat his employees than what you'd pay him. You didn't understand that at first. You do now. Harold isn't chasing the highest number. He's looking for someone who won't gut the thing he spent 38 years building and flip it in 2. That one fact, that he cares more about who you are than what you can wire him, is the first real thing you've learned in this whole process. And nobody put it in a book. The price is $3.5 million. That's roughly 40 times what's in your account. Some mornings, sitting in your old Accord outside the gym, you feel embarrassed by the gap. But lately the embarrassment has been turning into something else. Curiosity. Because now you see them everywhere. A roofing company 2 exits down, owner trying to sell for a year with no takers. A pest control outfit whose owner mentioned at a dinner that his kids want nothing to do with it. You didn't go looking for this pattern. It found you once you started paying attention. Roughly 10,000 Americans turn 65 every single day. A huge share of them own something. A business, a fleet, a building full of machines that still run. And most have no plan for the day they stop showing up. 4 out of 5 of these businesses that get listed never sell at all. They just close. You're not rich enough to buy Harold's business. That was never the question. The question, the one you're only starting to understand, is whether that $88,000 was ever the thing standing between you and it. You call Harold back on a Tuesday, on your lunch break, alone in your car. You don't have $3.5 million. What you have is a plan you can barely say out loud yet, one that starts with a bank and a number that isn't yours. The banker's office smells like burnt coffee. His name is Roy, a commercial lender, and he's done this long enough that he doesn't blink when you tell him your balance against a $3.5 million purchase. That's not the problem, Roy says, sliding a term sheet across. The problem is your signature. Here's how it actually works. The bank covers most of the price, backed by a government-guaranteed loan program. Harold agrees to hold a slice himself in a seller's note, but on standby, meaning he doesn't see a dollar of it for 2 years. That standby note is what lets the bank count it as equity instead of debt. And the small piece that's left is yours? You call an old college roommate, now a doctor, and he wires you $40,000 without asking a question you can't answer. You sign the documents on a Thursday under humming fluorescent lights. Then Roy slides 1 page across separately, and this one he doesn't rush. The personal guarantee. Your signature puts a lien on the house you and your wife bought 4 years ago, the one with the swing set still in the backyard from the family before you. If the business fails, the bank comes for your home. You sign it anyway. Your hand doesn't shake, which surprises you more than anything else that day. The first 90 days are nothing like you pictured. Harold's bookkeeper hands you a shoebox of receipts that includes his daughter's braces and 2 hunting trips, all run through the company account like it was his personal wallet, which, for 38 years, it basically was. You spend your nights untangling 6 years of statements, separating the business from the man. Your checking account, which read $88,000 3 months ago, now reads $1,200. You don't tell your doctor friend that part. But the locations are running. Payroll clears. Harold's old customers haven't gone anywhere. You own something now, mortgage to the hilt, personally guaranteed, barely breathing, but yours. And around month 8, sitting at that old desk at 11 at night, you start doing math that has nothing to do with survival. You start wondering what happens if you did this again. By year 3, the laundry business clears around $750,000 a year, and you've stopped checking your account every morning. The absence of dread feels strange. You could stop here. Plenty of people would. Instead, you drive 40 minutes to a diner to meet a man who owns an HVAC service company, wants out, bad hip, a son in another state who sells software and has no interest in ductwork. His price is about 3 times earnings. You know this multiple. You paid something close to it yourself. The hard part isn't finding the deal. It's admitting, on the drive home, that you can't run 2 businesses the way you ran one. Standing in the shop, knowing every customer's name. So you do something that feels like losing control. You promote your best operator to general manager and hand her the keys. The first morning you sit in your own driveway for 4 minutes before you can make yourself drive to the new deal instead of the old shop. It feels like admitting you're replaceable, until your accountant says the thing out loud. You're not an operator anymore, you're an allocator. And here's what nobody warned you about. The moment you own 2 businesses instead of 1, the math underneath them changes, for reasons that have nothing to do with how hard either one works. An HVAC company doing $600,000 a year, on its own, sells for 3 or 4 times earnings. Small, risky, dependent on one owner, but folded under the same roof as the laundry business. One holding structure, one balance sheet a bank actually trusts, and that combined entity is suddenly worth 6 to 8 times earnings. Same dollar of profit, almost double the value. Nobody worked twice as hard. You just stopped being one small fragile thing and became something a lender could underwrite with confidence. 8 businesses in, you can't hold it all in your head anymore. 8 sets of books, 8 insurance brokers, 8 lawyers who've never spoken to each other. One subsidiary is quietly losing money, and it takes you 3 weeks to notice, because nobody up the chain is looking at the same numbers the same way. You call your accountant. You don't need another acquisition, he says. You need a spine, one finance chief across all 8 companies, one legal team, one system. So you build a platform that sits above the operating companies and charges each a management fee. And that fee becomes the first clean channel moving cash upward to you. Then he shows you something else. The laundry business, 7 years paid down, has enough equity that you can refinance it, pull over $1 million in cash out as a dividend, and never give up a share of ownership. The business owes the money. You still own all of it. The risk sits on its balance sheet. The cash lands in yours. That same week, an advisor calls. A private equity group wants to buy the whole platform. All 8 companies. $50 million. One transaction. You sit with that number longer than any number since $3.5 million. You call back on a Tuesday and tell them no, because Harold Vance chose you over 3 other buyers on one promise, that you wouldn't gut what he built. And a private equity group out of another city would fire half his old crew inside 18 months. You didn't come this far to break the one promise that got you in the door. What changes after that isn't the businesses. It's you. You bring on a real board. You build the audit quality financials you should have built years ago. And when that money-losing subsidiary finally comes up for a real decision, you don't pour more money into it out of loyalty. You cut it. It's the coldest decision you've made, and it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like becoming someone slightly different than the person at Harold's kitchen table. But then a seller turns down an offer nearly 20% higher than yours and tells you it's because the other buyers wouldn't promise to keep the name on the building. You didn't even have to put a number on that. And you realize, sitting across from him, that the promise you made to Harold years ago has quietly become the entire reason anyone chooses you now. You're 46, in a conference room in a building you own outright, and a man representing a family office is trying to buy something you decided years ago you'd never sell. 18 companies, the same unglamorous businesses, laundry, HVAC, pest control, plumbing, now under one structure, throwing off tens of millions in free cash flow every year whether you show up or not. His offer is real. It's also not the point anymore, And you can tell he doesn't understand why. Because his fund has investors waiting on a return inside 5 to 7 years, which means everything they touch eventually gets flipped, ready or not. You have no such clock. You can hold Harold's laundromats for another 30 years if you want. That single difference, the absence of a deadline, is why sellers keep choosing you over funds with 10 times your money. That night, your phone buzzes. It's Harold, in his late 70s now, retired, calling just to talk, the way he does every few months. He asks how the laundromats are running. You tell him the same crew still shows up, same hospital contracts, same buildings he built with his father in 1985. He goes quiet a second, then says the same thing he said the last 3 times. I made the right call. You hang up, and it hits you differently than it used to. He never once asked what the businesses were worth. He asked if they were still standing. That's the thing you understand now that you didn't at his kitchen table 15 years ago. None of this was ever about the $3.5 million or the $50 million you turned down. It was about becoming someone a stranger could trust, with something he built with his hands. And somewhere out there right now, someone's 68, tired, and deciding who gets to keep their name on the door. You just don't know yet whose call you're about to get.